Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. On today's episode of the Cybersecurity Studio, I want to introduce you to a concept referred to as the Internet of Things. You probably heard about this concept on a lot of different websites, and let me just kind of boil it down to you. It is basically, as more and more devices become web-enabled, they become part of the Internet. It isn't just computers. Like, for example, in my house, I have at least 3 laptops, some old spare ones lying around, 3 cell phones, my son's Xbox, my son's Nintendo, and a whole bunch of other devices that are the router, the printer, and a few other devices which could potentially be hooked up to the Internet. Okay, now what this means is that all these devices have to be taken care of, and they have to be secured. Now, part of the problem is most people don't even realize the scale of the Internet of Things. Like, for example, I was working on a contract for the Department of Defense, and I was working on a project about patching all the devices within DoD. At the time, we had about 7 million devices that include all the laptops, desktops, servers, and so on. But when we started taking a look around, like, for example, medical devices, all the military hospitals and medical treatment facilities, now we start talking about 12 million devices, because it isn't just the laptops at the hospitals or the clinics. We're talking about the x-ray machines, we're talking about the monitoring devices, we're talking about all the little tablets the doctors and nurses carry around with them. So all of a sudden, there are a lot more devices on the Internet than most people realize. Now, that poses some challenges from a cybersecurity viewpoint. Like, for example, how do you keep those things patched? Because part of the problem is a lot of times the devices have to be maintained with the latest versions of the software, and sometimes the companies that make these devices don't put out a patch. Or if you put out a patch, or if you do implement a new patch, that might affect their certification according to the FDA, and so it becomes a challenge, and you have to kind of break down the problem. Like, for example, at my house, with all of our devices, I use Router Magic because of the router that I own. And so I can track all the different devices that are connected to the Internet at my house. But, you know, I'm kind of like in a benign environment. We're only talking about 3 people here. Every time something goes on, I can track and see what's going on. I can control, like, for example, my son, if he was left on to himself, he could play video games all day and all night. You know, so sometimes I have to turn off those devices so my son can start sleeping in a regular sleeping pattern. And then also, too, not just updating the software, but making sure who's on your network. A lot of times, if you run a scan of your networks, you find a lot of devices that were put on a project 5 years ago, and it was just left on there. Nobody's maintaining it. Nobody's taking care of it. Or they put on some software with testing and just left it on the network. All those become security vulnerabilities and weaknesses that other people can exploit. So keep that in mind when you start putting stuff on your network, whether it's your home wireless network, like if all of a sudden you get a smart refrigerator or something like that, or something at work. Think about the implications. How long do you want this device on? Is it going to be forever and a day? And are you going to maintain it? Would you want to put restrictions on it so you can only do certain things while you're on the Internet, or kind of keep it closed off the Internet so somebody can't exploit it? Keep those thoughts in mind as we go along. Enjoy the journey. If you want to support my videos so you become better and more fancy, www.penetron.com/John Dittmer, like my name as it's being spelt down here. All right, have a great and safe day. Take care.